Well, folks, I know the 2028 election we're still 4 years away at this point, but some Democrats are already gearing up for a 2028 run. Gavin Newsom has started to make some moves towards the middle on some really hot button issues for the Democrat Party that they're very unpopular with. And Tim Walz has announced that he is seriously considering this, even though he says he doesn't want to. But anyways, we're going to be looking at who we expect to jump in this race and who will be best positioned to win a 2028 race. But before we get into it, drop down below, hit that subscribe button, make sure you never miss another video from us in the future. Just to preface this, we're not going to look at every single potential Democrat candidate, and we're not even going to cover the best ones. We're going to cover the ones who are going to be most likely to jump in this race, and I'll explain later on some people who we choose not to cover, why we did not cover them. We're going to start off with the obvious pick of Kamala Harris. She was the 2024 Democrat nominee for about 3 months. And after losing the 2024 election, almost every poll that has been taken from the Democrats shows that she's leading in it. If we look at all opinion polling, she's leading an average of about 24 points in every single poll. The Democrat base obviously wants to give Harris another shot in 28. Now, they're assuming with a full primary process and a full general election to campaign for, Harris would be much better positioned to take on the Republican candidate. I would say Harris is also very strongly considering a run for governor of California. There was some reports out about yesterday saying that she is very strongly mulling whether she is going to run for California governor. She's really trying to pull the Richard Nixon move where you lose the presidency, you run for the governor of California, you lose that, and then you run for president again, and hopefully you win. Don't think it's going to work out too good for her. Although Nixon did become president the second time, he did end up resigning in disgrace about, 4.5 years later, just after he got reelected the second time by a huge landslide. But anyways, we'll see if she ends up running for the governor of California or not, which could have some implications on her 2028 run. But anyways here, the theory that many Democrats are relying on for their support for Kamala running in 2028 is that more time on the campaign trail would help her. A full Democrat primary process plus a full election or general election campaign cycle would help her, which I strongly disagree with. From my view, more time on the trail would expose her even more than her 2024 run did and her 2020 run did. She was able to, in the month, or I should say 3 months that she ran, she had many campaign advisors, people who were trying to put lipstick on a pig. That's what they were trying to do. She is a terrible candidate. Terrible candidate. She has some of the most radical positions that you can even imagine. She wants to ban fracking. She wants to raise the minimum wage to like $25. She does not live in reality. She is a California left-wing radical Democrat who wants to turn America into California. It is as simple as that. And I strongly disagree with the theory that more time on the campaign trail would help her. It would expose her even deeper. We would get more word salads. We would have just more totally embarrassing moves made by her campaign. You look at what they wanted to do with Joe Rogan in 2024. They wanted to control the whole thing. We all know how Joe Rogan's podcast goes. They're very long. They're 2.5 to 3.5 hours long. They're unscripted and unedited, and you go to Joe Rogan. Well, Kamala's campaign wanted the exact opposite. They wanted it 45 minutes to an hour, scripted and edited, and they wanted Joe Rogan to come to her. That's you have to meet people where they're at. Trump met people where they were at. Kamala didn't. It's as simple as that. He went on all these podcasts with Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan and the Nelk Boys. All these different podcasts. Went on Andrew Schultz's podcast. And you really got to see a different side of him. Kamala tried to be this prim and proper, the exact opposite of Trump. Trump is the most authentic person you're going to meet in politics. Kamala is one of the most inauthentic people you are ever going to meet. And she tries to be authentic. She's inauthentic, but then she tries to put a face on that she is authentic. And then you end up with these horrible word salads, which basically define most of her campaign. And the only chance that she would have at winning in 2028 is the Biden basement strategy. Stay the hell away. You look what she did with the Al Smith dinner. She recorded a video, that's it. She isn't there. She doesn't have to deal with the heat in the moment. It's prim, proper, edited, and scripted. That's it. That's the only chance that in hell she would have at doing it. Now, moving on to the next most likely candidate. We're going to talk about Buttigieg, but we're going to skip over Buttigieg and hit on Newsom, who has been in the news recently for some of the things he has done. Mainly his strong opposition to President Trump and some flip-flopping he's done on some issues. Gavin Newsom, we'll kind of just start from the get-go. He garnered a lot of national attention on many occasions, but most notably, he was the leading figure in the Democrat Party during the COVID pandemic. He locked his state down for a very, very long time, almost longer than any other governor locked down his state. He abused the rights of individuals and parents in the state of California during the COVID pandemic. We know Newsom is gearing up for a presidential run. You just look what he's done. He is one of the few Democrats, which I deeply and profusely disagree with Gavin Newsom on many issues, but he is one of the few Democrats who has looked in the mirror at the last election and said, we messed up, what can we do different? He's not acting like the Ken Martins of the world, or the AOCs of the world, or the Hakeem Jeffries, where they're doubling down on the crap that they've been doing for the last 8 years. Everyone else is doubling down while Newsom is taking a step back and really looking at the whole political landscape. This is where we're at. What do we need to do to get back to power? What do they need to do? You look at what he's done. He started a podcast. I think it's called I Am Gavin Newsom, or This Is Gavin Newsom, or some stupid shit like that. But in his first podcast, on his first episode of his podcast, he had on conservative influencer Charlie Kirk. And he finally has admitted that these radical policies regarding transgender athletes are not right. We're going to take a listen here, and then we're going to kind of analyze it a little bit afterwards. Let's take a listen.
Be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports, right. that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
No, and I appreciate.
But would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. So that's easy to call out, the unfairness of that. There's also a humility and grace, that these poor people are more likely to commit suicide, have anxiety and depression. And the way that people talk down to vulnerable communities is an issue that I have a hard time with as well. So both things I can hold in my hand. How can we address this issue with the kind of decency that I think, is inherent in you, but not always expressed?
It's like you right now should come out.
I'll give Newsom some brownie points here. I agree with him what he said at the end there. It's a delicate situation and it should be handled with respect. We are not here to degrade people who are transgender, who have gender dysphoria. You don't go out, it's a mental illness. You don't go find someone who has someone who has autism or is on the spectrum. You don't call them the R word. You don't do that. You treat them with respect. That's how these people should be addressed to. And that's something I think a lot of conservatives get wrong. We need to address, or at least some conservatives get wrong, that we need to address this situation. They're a vulnerable community. We need to address them with a delicate hand. But it doesn't mean that we're going to allow men and women's sports. It doesn't mean we're going to allow gender mutilation of young children. Not going to happen. That hard firm no. But you can be gentle, delicate, and still get your point across and still hold the same positions that we have. But just show a little respect to some of these people because they do have a mental illness. They don't want to recognize it as a mental illness. And so it makes sense why they're saying it's not a mental illness. So you're not going to treat it like a mental illness and give it the delicacy that a mental illness deserves. But the reality is it is a mental illness and you need to treat it like a mental illness. You need to treat it with delicacy. And here's the thing. Don't buy into any of the bullcrap that Newsom is selling here. He may say it's deeply unfair. You know what, Gavin Newsom, you POS. You passed some of the most radical laws in America when it comes to stripping away parental rights. He passed laws that prohibit schools from punishing teachers if they don't notify parents that their child has transitioned. He passed some of the strictest laws in the country that allow students, male students, to use female restrooms, to use female locker rooms. They ingrained gender identity into it's a protected class. People who how they identify, they don't look at the biological sex, they go by gender identity, which is absolutely ridiculous, which means that if I decide I'm in high school and I'm going to go to go to school and I'm all of a sudden a woman today, the school district cannot stop me from using a female bathroom. They cannot stop me from using a female locker room, and they cannot stop me from signing up on a female sports team. That's how radical he is. He is in the Medicaid program that they offer through the state of California provides coverage for minors to get gender, I'm going to call it, because the YouTube algorithm doesn't like it when I say mutilation, we're going to say gender reassignment surgeries, whether it's chemically or surgically. The Medicaid covers this for the youth programs, for youth, for people under 18, which is sick. This is a vulnerable community and we should not be allowing them. They can't even go buy spray paint. They can't get a tattoo. They can't buy alcohol. They can't buy marijuana. They can't buy any of that. But somehow we're going to allow them to mutilate their body to the point where they're never going to be able to be sexually satisfied in their life. They're never going to be able to procreate because of this. So don't buy into what Newsom is throwing out there, because he's full of shit. And I believe Newsom in a primary would have a good chance to win in the primary. But I think as the governor of California, he is viewed as a West Coast elitist. And in crucial swing states like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, he's going to struggle there. In a general election, Gavin Newsom is going to struggle very hard, very, very hard in those states. You know, when you look, and we can go in and kind of fill in the, where are our safe blue states here? Why is this moving around? You know, you're looking at this right here. Where are your swing states? You got Nevada, Arizona, and I'm just going to go in, fill these out right now real quick, just so we can have a good look at it. When you're looking at the map here, what do you have? You have, oops, and these are backwards. I've got them backwards. You're looking at these seats right here. This is how the election is going to be. This is how it's going to turn out. Here are your swing states that you have right here. Nevada, Arizona. He's going to struggle in Nevada and Arizona just simply for the reason that so many people that flee California go to Nevada and Arizona. They like that climate there, but they don't want to be in California. Just for example, I know someone who was recently in California. They went to Costco, they bought the big 48 pack of water bottles, plastic water bottles. Here, I'm from Minnesota, they're $3.99 for the big case of water. You go to California, it's $3.99 too, but there's a $2.99 tax on top of that $3.99 case of water, which now it's $7 plus state sales tax is even higher than it is in Minnesota. So it was almost over $8 for the same case of water that here in Minnesota, it's $4. In California, it's $8. You'll wonder why so many people can't afford to live there. People have left California. They go to Nevada and Arizona. They don't California my Arizona. Don't California my Nevada. You're looking at the Rust Belt states here. I think people are going to struggle a lot, especially Gavin Newsom, to connect with those Midwestern folksy voters, especially when you have someone like a Ron DeSantis or a J.D. Vance who's leading the Republican ticket. He's going to look very much out of touch. The Republicans are going to be able to paint Kamala or Newsom very much out of touch relative to the Republican Party in the crucial swing states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. The Republicans win those, it's game over. The numbers the math don't math at that point for the Democrats. But I think it's very likely at this point that he will jump in the race. And there's a good chance he could be the Democrat nominee. We can only hope. Next on the list we're going to jump over to is Pete Buttigieg, Choo Choo Train Buttigieg, he was the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, gained a ton of national attention in the 2020 Democrat primary when he won the Iowa caucus. He then became the Secretary of Transportation under Biden after such a great showing in the 2020 primary. And now we know Buttigieg barely won the Iowa caucus, which shows he does have some rural appeal. Places like Iowa could help him win in a general election, but also he's also gearing up for a Senate bid in Michigan right now. He is the leading Democrat in the Michigan Senate seat. Obviously, we know incumbent Senator Gary Peters is not going to be running for re-election. He is the most well-known national recognition candidate that is in this race here. This is a must-hold for the Democrats. I'm kind of back and forth on it. Currently, polling has him around 6 to 12%. Let's see, the average has him about 8%. He jumps anywhere from, 11, really it's like 13 to 6%, 5%, 4%. He bounces around in there. I think if he jumps into the Senate election in 2026 in Michigan, he's not going to be running for the presidency. He's going to go there. It's going to be a tough seat to win. Like, this is one of the top places for Republicans to target in the Senate. 2 states Trump won, where they now have Democrat senators up for re-election. Georgia with Jon Ossoff, Michigan with Gary Peters, and he's not running for re-election. So we're going to see what happens in this election here. I think if Buttigieg jumps in this race, he's not going to jump in the presidential race. The next name we're going to look at on our list is Josh Shapiro. He's currently polling anywhere from about 7, 8% down to 1% on this list. He's the current governor of Pennsylvania. He's the former longtime Attorney General of Pennsylvania and gained lots of attention during the 2024 presidential run for really 2 reasons. The number one was his response to President Trump's assassination attempt in the state that he oversees. Butler is in Pennsylvania, where the assassination attempt occurred. He had a very, very good response just from a national perspective. Even as a more conservative person than I am, I looked at his response and I felt good about that. It wasn't partisan. He rose to that moment good. Also, as a top contender to be on the ticket with Kamala Harris, there's some speculation that Shapiro turned down the offer from Harris to be her running mate, which I don't blame him. If I was a Democrat like Shapiro, and Kamala Harris reached out to me and she wanted me to be number 2, I'd say, hell no. Hell no. Are you kidding me? Half of the Democrat Party is anti-Semitic and wants to destroy the state of Israel. No. Because many people think that choosing Tim Walz as the VP was one of the final nails in the coffin of her 2024 campaign. Shapiro, he's from a crucial swing state and is relatively popular in that swing state. He boasts plus 50% approval ratings right now. And at that time, he was, 54, 55% approval rating. That could have been crucial. We know that in the election, a lot of it was going to come down to Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. He could have brought in a lot more appeal to those Midwestern states. And I wonder if I can let's look at the 2024... Or are they going to let me look at it? I just want to look at the 2024 presidential election. Let's see. Oh, well, it's just going to keep it. It's just going to keep it this way. But the reality is most of the states were going to come down to, or the race was going to come down to Pennsylvania. Even on election night, it was like, we are all looking at Pennsylvania. How is it going to go in this election? Obviously, we know Trump swept all of the swing states in that election. It's, we're going to look at 2024 presidential election map. He swept all the states. Won Pennsylvania by, I believe, over 100,000 votes, I think. 120,000 votes he won by. This was a place where Kamala could have looked at. Josh Shapiro would have done probably would have helped out much better. She picked him from Tim Walz from Minnesota, and it's not like Minnesota was like that. It's like, yes, the Democrats did better than they did in 2016, but ultimately they did really bad in 2016, so it's not a surprise. She only won the state here by 4 points. That's nothing special. It's not like Tim Walz ran up the score in Minnesota or something like that, and nobody was really worried that much about Minnesota. So many people see him as a potential frontrunner for the race, but could be limited by his limited national recognition for people who don't follow politics. I follow politics 24/7. I know who Josh Shapiro is. My mom, who gets her politics from me, my fiance who gets her politics from me, does she know who Josh Shapiro is? Absolutely not. She has no idea who he is. And a big test for him is going to be, can he deliver in the 2026 midterms? That's going to be a big test for his Democrat moderate brand that he represents, because ultimately he is the more moderate candidate in this race if he were to jump in here. So We're going to keep you up to date on what happens with Josh Shapiro, but now we're going to jump over to Tim Walz, better known as Tampon Tim. He's the reason, President Trump understands why Democrats think men can have periods, as we looked at Tim Walz. It's like, what more do I really need to say about Tim Walz? I've covered him heavily on this channel. He's probably the reason Kamala Harris did so bad in the swing states and lost every single one. Most people, like we said earlier, felt Josh Shapiro would have been a much, much better choice for Kamala Harris. Tim Walz is the definition of a progressive beta male. There are no, the polling showed that Trump was doing very well with young men and Kamala Harris was doing terrible with young men. She needed to turn out that young vote to win the election. She picks Tim Walz. Like, you wonder why the Democrat Party is struggling so bad with young men right now. It's because they're elevating men like Tim Walz for the younger generations to look up to. Which, to be honest, as a young guy myself, most men that I meet, even the Democrat men that I know who are younger, do not resonate with Tim Walz. They do not. Nobody relates with him. He's that weird grandpa progressive. He's like a younger Bernie Sanders, who is basically like Gavin Newsom's bitch, because he basically is trying to turn Minnesota into California. Well, you could say, is he trying to turn it into Little Somalia, or is he trying to turn it into Little California? Nobody looks up to him. Nobody looks at this guy as a strong male leader. He's a follower. That's the simple. Tim Walz is a follower. Nobody looks to him as a leader. Nothing more you got to say on that. Tim Walz has a lot of liabilities that could hurt the Democrat Party in the 2028 election. If Democrats are smart, they're going to, take Tampon Tim and pull him out and throw him in the trash and forget about him. Because all Tim Walz is going to be remembered for is being the worst vice presidential pick in the history of American politics. It's like, that's all he's going to be remembered for. Now jumping over to Gretchen Whitmer. Gretchen Whitmer, we know, current governor of Michigan, was elevated as a leader of the Democrat Party, really due to her radical, insane response to the COVID pandemic, locking her state down just like Gavin Newsom and violating individual rights. Unfortunate for America and Michigan, she was reelected in 2022, and speculation about her 2028 run is very strong, especially considering the fact she chose to not run. She declined to run for the open Senate seat in her state. She is popular in Michigan. She most likely would have done very well if she ran, let's put it this way. If she ran for the primary for the Democrats here, she most likely would win. Buttigieg would most likely pull out. Like, that's just the reality of the situation. And because she chose not to run for the Senate, it really shows that she's setting her sights high. And even if she does run and doesn't win, but she does a halfway decent job in the Democrat primary, she's most likely looking to earn herself a cabinet seat for the, if a Democrat were to be elected in 28, she's trying to get into that administration. You kind of look at what happened with, Doug Burgum. Someone jumped in the race, now is elevated to Secretary of the Interior. She's most likely trying to do something like that, elevate her onto the national stage, get in federal politics in Washington, D.C., similar to what Pete Buttigieg did. Did good in the 2020 elections, was nominated for Secretary of Transportation. The Democrats knew he would be a strong candidate moving forward. That's just, it is what it is. So there are a number of people we didn't cover in this race here, which I think we should, for sure, just take a look at. Andy Beshear, Roy Cooper, AOC, it's like, what the hell do you say about AOC? She's a self-described Democrat socialist, strong advocate for Medicare for all and the Green New Scam. Most Democrats and established Democrats think that a run by her would be disastrous. She may have a strong base of supporters, but appealing to swing state voters. If you think it's going to be tough for Gavin Newsom, it's going to be almost impossible for AOC. But I think the big names we're talking about, Andy Beshear, Roy Cooper. Here's my thing. I think Andy Beshear could jump in this race and he would be a good Democrat. You think about it. He's a Democrat from a very Republican state of Kentucky. He does very good in the elections there relative to most Democrats, how they do. He is very good at reaching over the aisle and getting Republicans to vote for him. Ultimately, I just don't think this is the direction the Republicans are going. I threw Josh Shapiro out there because they were considering him in 2024 for the vice presidency, a swing state governor. I think there's more to it there. But ultimately, the Democrats are not looking to move towards Andy Beshear or Roy Cooper or Josh Shapiro. They're moving more towards the AOCs, the Kamala Harrises, the Gavin Newsoms of the world. They're not moving more to the center. They're moving to the left. That's just the reality. I don't think that progressives in the party would allow something like this to happen. That's just the reality. But all in all, it is very safe to say that the Democrats do not have a deep bench here. For being one of the two major parties in America, it's almost embarrassing that this is all you have. You've got Buttigieg, Harris, Newsom, Tampon Tim. Like, that's the best you got. And, we're going to keep an eye on the other Democrats who might be jumping into this race who we didn't cover here. But as of now, I would say that it is very, extremely embarrassing to say this. And I cringe almost saying this. But as of right now, Kamala Harris most likely will be the best candidate positioned as of right now to become the next nominee in 2028 and to win. And I guess I don't really care about becoming the Democrat nominee. I'm saying to win in 28. I think as of right now, Kamala Harris, and that's really sad to say. And that's not saying anything about Kamala Harris. That just says how horrible the bench is for the Democrats. I think she'd be terrible. But it's just more to say how horrible their bench is. But I'm going to say it. Kamala Harris is the best positioned Democrat to win in 2028. But I still think she'd get smoked in the general election. But she's the best positioned of all these candidates here. So that's going to wrap things up for today. Drop a comment down below. Who do you believe the Democrats should throw their money behind? Who is best positioned to win in 2028 and defeat most likely either J.D. Vance or Ron DeSantis? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe for more.